So the key definition really is about using collaborative tools and robots, in this case, that are actually automated system. And the key function really is, my key emphasis is about these systems and machines are actually pre-programmed for repetitive, routine, automated tasks. In fact, I would say from the direct client aspect of it, we are hoping this kind of systems and robotics and technology can augment a lot of the more routine and I would say mundane type of activities so that the human can really be released to do higher skilled and productive kind of work. So that is the purpose of Cobotics, because later we're going to talk about some of the sentiments of direct staff, particularly on the ground. When robotics come into play, there are certain anxiety and the sense of feeling threatened, how these actually will affect and influence the way that they do work. Of course, at the end of it, because of Goshen's background, we are very interested in really the use of cobot technology, how it actually directly influence and affect the care users, right? So we are talking about the clients, the patients, how we can actually support them through the use of cobotic to actually improve their care delivery, improve their care outcome, as well as even for conditions that we traditionally think it's progressively deteriorating, can still be improving or getting benefits if we use the cobot technology to augment the way that clinicians do their work. So this is just a very quick overview when we talk about cobot technology. As you would know, we always talk about the front of the house and the back of the house. Of course, today's emphasis is really talking about the front of the house, where how we are going to use cobot technology in the interface with our patients, with our clients, ultimately improving their care experience. So I think some of us are probably quite familiar in this day and age. In current practice, we're using already health monitoring system. Even in our own personal lives, you have your wearables in terms of monitoring your health status and fitness status. And actually, in many care settings, this is already happening in the hospitals, in the centers and the nursing homes. We are looking at rehabilitation is a huge area where a lot of cobot technology is actually coming in to improve the way that we do rehab. And in that sense, also increase the accessibility of patients to have opportunity to get better. In fact, as a clinician, that's the thing that is most exciting to me. If I look at 5 years ago where the person cannot improve because of the condition, because of the limitation of the technology, we look at now people with dementia, people with a spinal cord injury, people with stroke, severe stroke, they can improve in functional abilities because our technology has advanced so tremendously. Now, of course, the use of telemedicine, telepresence robot, and of course, with the aging population, a lot of our older people are actually in intermediate and long-term care setting. And we all know a lot of them may not truly have the opportunity to be independent and functional. But that doesn't mean they cannot improve in the area of quality of life, in the area of well-being. So the use of cobot technology to support psychosocial needs, engagement, that is definitely a huge area that many of our care service providers can consider using. And of course, the back-end bits, I think recently, in fact, I talked to Grace, we talk about the kitchen itself is how robotic that you probably minimize the need of human being to prepare food for many people in a care setting. Of course, we talk about in some centers, you already see these robots going around, spraying sanitization and infection measures, really taking over a lot of the tasks that previously we expect human beings having to do. And of course, things like delivery services in terms of autonomous guided kind of vehicles. I mean, these are just the very top of the in terms of the superficial kind of solutions that we're seeing in the back end to support the organization, ultimately to help the organization be more efficient and effective in the way we deliver that care and services. So this is a quick overview of when we are looking to cobot technology, a quick sense of what its key aims are, what the whole idea is to enable the human staff to deliver human value work, and ultimately for end users who are actually paying, somebody's paying for them to receive our care and services, are actually getting the full impact from that treatment.
Thank you, Hui. And could you maybe also share with us, implementing cobots, what could be some of the benefits?
I think that is quite a no-brainer. Do we have the next slide? I think that is really quite an intuitive response, right? I mean, for organization, I mean, with our recent, and later we're going to share some solutions that we have tried with some organization. Ultimately, it is not to replace human being. It's really to augment and supplement how the human being does the work. And in that sense, hopefully increase the productivity as well as optimizing the resources. And resources, we are going beyond just a human resource. We're talking about in terms of the space, in terms of the materials and the tools, that with our existing resource, we can actually hit out to more patients, more users, and more clients. That's a very simple equation. And I think for the organization, I keep emphasizing the word about consistency. Now, we could do many initiatives, pilot many new things. And we know for projects and pilots, when we are first rolling out, we have the most attention put on it to ensure that it's successful. Yet, I think many in this room will agree with me, sustainability is often an issue. And how do we now ensure, hey, those solutions that we've piloted that seems to make things easier for our staff as well as for the organization to function as for the client, how do we ensure that it's still consistently used? Now, the keyword is for the user using our services, are they consistently getting the quality of care, the quality of service that they rightly deserve? Now, for the staff, I think one of the things is how can we inject energy and hope and vibrancy in the area of work. I mean, many of us who work in the elder care scene, the work can get very mundane and routine, and it's an uphill task because the challenges is always just mounting up. I think the use of Cobotics does introduce to the sector and show the people working in that, look, there are newer ways to tackle the age-old problem. I mean, we all know we are aging, and that aging comes with so many other issues. We have heard it for 2 decades, right? But the use of cobot technology is just showing us, hey, with these same old problems that we keep talking about, there's a new innovative solutions that can help us to streamline processes or workflow, maybe even review some of the way we do our work, and some tasks can be made redundant. And there's the reducing that need to rework or solving recurring problems. Now, ultimately, we do want staff to feel like they are empowered, that they're satisfied in this, I will call the elder care scene really, it's really an uphill industry, but yet it's also an industry that if you get it right, if you see your impact, the staff actually can feel very satisfied. Now, ultimately for the clients, I mean, I always say without them, we all don't have a job. So when we provide service, when we provide care, ultimately it's, are they getting what they're paying for? Are they getting what they deserve? Right? And I think for some of us in the room, if you know, recently we've launched a humanoid, we've launched other solution. We are so pleasantly surprised that even for people with dementia, they can have improvement in their cognitive function and engagement, in their functional abilities in some of the rehab tools I'm going to talk about later. And despite their disability, if we know how to leverage on tech, cobots technology, we may make a previously very disabled person fairly independent. Now, ultimately, it means that the people who are paying for our service generally improve in their overall sense of well-being, if not for increased independence. So definitely, I guess, Sharon, for the benefits of using Cobotics, these are at least an overview of what it definitely can help the sector.
Thanks, Fia. And I'm sure these are not benefits that you guys in the audience here haven't heard of or haven't thought about. But let's not shy away from the elephant in the room, right? What are some implications, let's say, if we do introduce cobots to the sector, to the organization? What's going to happen? What are people going to think?
I love this next question, right? Because the fact is, every change for the people who introduce the change, of course, it's an obvious benefits. But to the people who are going to face the challenge of now using it, reviewing the way they do their work, there are very real sentiments from the ground. I mean, one of the key things the first question when we bring in technology, and recently when we bring in the taxi, the first question is, what bokang jo already lo? I mean, I've heard this even from professionals. I'm not even talking about, let's say, the direct care staff. The professionals are thinking, does it mean now I'll be made redundant? Is this robot going to take over my work? Now, is it safe to use? I mean, the last thing you want is you use a very high-tech machine and then it blows up as you're doing therapy or activity with your patients or client, right? Now, does it also means now that I have a machine next to me, I have to do faster? I have to do my work faster. On top of that, I have to navigate even more complex tasks. If I now have to use a machine using an app, set up the machine, that actually can be quite daunting. I mean, like for me, I'm really a tech idiot, right? I use a very smartphone, but I only use it to make call, see message, and then receive email. I've been maybe take photos. But we all know with let's say with the iPhone, there are 20,001 things that technically we can still leverage on the equipment to do it for us. Now the idea of not understanding technology and we start bringing robotics, it can actually create very real anxiety and fear for the direct user. Now, the other question is staff are thinking, if the machine is so expensive, does it mean now, on top of taking care of my clients and my patients, I now also have to take care of this machine? So you end up having like dual responsibility. And lastly, again, this is very recent insights I hear right in my face. Does it mean now my performance is actually compared to this equipment? Now, I guess we want to highlight this because like what Sharon said, we are talking about the elephant in the room. There's no doubt technology is supposed to help the way we provide our care and services. But the reality is we are in a human touch environment and business. The people executing those surveys are actually human beings. And human beings have thoughts and feelings and reactions. Now, so if we are able to understand some of these implications, that means we are also more likely to be able to engage the end user as well as the direct care staff to hopefully address some of their concerns and fears, and then ultimately use these cobots to actually support them and help them, that they have a greater sense of a job satisfaction in terms of their impact.
And for Goshen, of course, it is one of our very key vision and mission to then, of course, look at co-creating innovative solutions with social services and community care organizations, some of you whom which we have worked with closely. And if you do know and maybe understand a little bit about Goshen, I mean, we want to look at how we can uplift the sector in general. Our key mission is to improve the quality of care and quality of life of the clients. I mean, we will grow one day. We want to enjoy the good works that we have sold. We want to be able to help organizations build capability and capacity. We want to then also of course look at how to help organizations optimize their resources so that they can do so and ultimately improve the life of the clients that they're working with. Yeah. And for us, of course, we do have featured clients that we work with. We have, I mean, this looks like quite a mishmash, but we have worked with them in terms of implementing technology, Cobotics, projects, all with the idea to look at how we can improve the life and quality of care of our clients. And maybe at this point, I mean, Huya, if you could share a little bit about what are some examples of cobots that we have helped organizations to look at or implement?
So Sharon, so I think this is a part that is of greatest interest to many in the room, right? So looking at the cobots that have been implemented, that we have had the opportunity to look at with some of the organization to implement, can I remind us, these are all what we call direct client technology, right? So these are solutions that we use to directly impact the care delivery or interventions that we have with our patients and our clients. So for example, if I look at this first spectrum, we are looking at things that is promoting learning, promoting engagement. So if I think in quite a few nursing homes, we do see the silver fit as an interaction tool, that I think therapists also use it as a way for intervention in terms of physical and cognitive kind of therapy intervention. We are looking at also now in terms of learning management systems. Now, if you start seeing your users as members of your services rather than only just care recipient, so this can serve as a very useful platform where you can capture your client's data in terms of their progress, in terms of the activities that they perform, and as well as a platform where you also can introduce different type of learning activities that is centrally managed by, let's say, the therapy or the activity department. So the Nearpod is also another solution that we have also introduced, worked with one of the CCOs to actually implement for people with actually very high, moderate to severe intellectual disability. So in terms of resulting, depending on very manual way of conducting activities, paper-based kind of activities, the Nearpod actually created a platform for the therapy department to be able to centrally manage the activity, the progress, the assessment of the direct clients at a central system. And of course, through that is the use of reducing the use of paper and pen kind of activities, but maybe using more tablet, which also promotes learning for people with cognitive impairment. And then the last one would be actually what we call the interactive or short throw projector. I think many organizations now have things like smart TVs and all that, which you think which has really tremendously helped the care staff in terms of conducting or facilitating activities and engagement. So the short throw or interactive projector is similar in that sense, but it's really running like a projector. But that means in terms of the interactivity, in terms of the number of people involved in being able to engage for learning and for activities becomes wider. And of course, it then presents also to the users, the clients, a different mode or interface of interaction, which for people with impairment, really, it's about bringing the idea of keeping them current to how technology has evolved in day-to-day life, but also it increases the accessibility in terms of functional ability. Now, the next spectrum of solution we have worked with organizations to implement are really very functional training and rehab focused kind of technology. Now, I particularly like to highlight that, for example, the AlterG. Now, in the past, people who are wheelchair bound, unable to stand up, it's impossible to put them on a treadmill because of sheer lack of strength, ability, and the pull of gravity. But the amazing AlterG literally displaces the weight of the person. And we were working with this Cerebral Palsy Association, where majority of their clients are actually wheelchair bound and impossible in their lifetime to actually stand. But the use of this AlterG has made many people who couldn't stand up in this treadmill looking like with a weight displacement kind of a feature and enable them to move. So you can imagine the type of joy and surprise when the actual clients themselves, I mean, in fact, I remember one of the clients actually had tears in their eyes. Thought I can never see again. But yet with this machine, you have not really override the person's disability and provide intervention that is beyond the capability of the person. Of course, and that helps in terms of mobility, in terms of functional abilities. The AlterG actually is really a life changer or a game changer to the whole rehabilitation process. So things like the C-Mill is really a combination of very clever robotics together with your traditional mobility functional training. As you can see there, it even supports a person who normally would need a human care staff to support in standing, like at least 1 or 2 TA, to guide this person to walk, yet at the same time, to be able to have an interactive component where they're doing also the cognitive game on top of training their physical function. Of course, the DST Pro, it's really an upgrade to your traditional parallel bar that, you basically see the patient walk up and down to practice walking. So the DST Pro really then also improves that capability in terms of tracking the performance of the person, tracking the progress, doing assessment, and also presenting the whole walking assessment procedure to be more enhanced, that The staff now don't have to keep changing the equipment to accommodate for different function of the person. And lastly, the BTE primers really is a huge one that we use in the disability sector for functional training, for vocational training. And that really has translated different way of training the end user how to be able to do a lot of work-related type of tasks in a manner that is engaging as well as empowering. Because the traditional way of intervention and rehab is the patient or the client is always reliant on the therapist, the doctor, the nurse to tell them what's happening and how their progress is and what to do next. The use of Cobotics really has now equalized that whole relationship between the patient, the client, and the care professional, because now information is made accessible to them. Now, technically for the end user, the more they know, there is a higher chance for them to be able to be more autonomous, as well as to be more motivated and collaborative in that receiving their care, receiving that therapy and the interventions. Of course, lastly, I will just to talk briefly about DEXI. DEXI may look beautiful, but it's not just a pretty thing. I want to keep saying. It's what we call a multi-competency humanoid. Basically, it does a mix of both things. It does not only the physical exercise training bit, which also target the psychomotor activity, but it does a lot of the activity engagement bit, which we're also seeing. So it's a nice mix in terms of currently we are launching it across in the next 2 months, up to 10 organizations, where DEXI now augment the therapy, the activity, and the engagement role that the residents would spend lesser time sitting and waiting, doing nothing, and yet could be engaged in meaningful exercises, meaningful games, as well as enjoying music and movement, and even a chit chat. So that technically helps when there's not enough human staff to be present in the ward. DEXI could fulfill a huge gap of that need in the care environment. So this is a quick overview for those of you who are beginning to start exploring cobotics. Really, in the era that we're living now, the options are limitless. But I think very much I want to highlight the cobotics technology are tools. Now, the tools in the hands of the therapist, in the hands of the doctor, the nurses, the activity program person, becomes powerful as a way to address the care needs and the service needs of their clients. So Sharon, that's a quick overview of what we have actually worked with the clients on in terms of the implementation of Cobotics solution.
Thanks, Via. Thanks, Via. And I mean, I think some of you may be thinking, how do we then approach implementing cobots or technology? How do we approach this? And I would like to maybe share with you for Goshen, how we have introduced. We use what we call the Goshen 3D approach. Our approach is designed from a more user-centric, person-centric perspective. And as you know, Goshen has been in the industry for more than 10 years. We are highly understanding the sector, our target audience, organizations like yourself. And with that understanding, we then enable you to sustain and then scale your solutions. If I could just share with you this 3D approach, we start off very much from the discover phase, where we try to kind of understand where your organization's environment is. So that could be through a baseline assessment. We could be doing interviews. We could be trying to find out from a data perspective, what your operating is, what your service intent is, what is your organization's environment like? Who are you competing against? What your clients are like? And with those understanding, we then gather your requirements, what you want to achieve, and of course, prioritize the areas of focus for your organization. Because as we all know, resources are really limited. You want to focus on where you get the biggest bang for your buck. You want to get the area where you can get the greatest client impact. So we help you then prioritize where maybe the opportunities are. And following the discover phase, we then look at how we can co-create solutions with you, with your stakeholders, with your staff. And through that co-creation, we find that as people come together, they brainstorm, they understand the intent of the implementation, more or less people will actually understand where we're going with robotics, where we're going with technology. We break down these big chunks, this whole roadmap into smaller action steps and tasks so that it's implementable, it's digestible, people can follow through with them. And last but not least, of course, then we look at establishing accountability. Because with that accountability, what gets measured gets done. Through the design phase, we could be doing things like co-creation workshops. We could be doing things like planning meetings. These are all activities that we can work with organizations to find out what best suits you at your schedule, with your staff, with your clients. Last but not least, knowing what the action steps are, the tasks are, we look at how we then deliver and implement the solutions to the organization. We look at it from a pilot phase and then a larger scaling up phase, because the pilot will then tell us, what works, what maybe may not work so well, and how it can then improve. Through the pilot phase, we also look back at gathering and evaluating what the project impact has been, the client impact has been, so that when we look at scaling the solution, the Cobotics, the technology, we know how best to do that. What are the most ideal ways, and also how to help with the change management of the staff, how to help them be aware and to deliver what you have probably want to do at the discover phase. So with this 3D approach, I wanted to ask Huya if she could maybe share with us how then it has been done in application.
Definitely, Sharon. So again, I'm going to just use Taxi because she's the most recent hot spot that we are dishing out to the sector. So if you remember, Sharon was talking about the 3D approach, right? So in the first phase is what we call the discover bit. Now, the solution will only be adopted, or you can get buy-in only if the people are convinced that it actually address a gap, right? That there's a need for it. Now, because sometimes if you're not careful, technology may sound very sexy, but you could have a sexy thing, but it's not useful to the way that you do your work, instead create more job for you, then that's not going to garner buy-in. So why the discover baseline current state assessment is really critical. And of course, the type of assessments we do must be meaningful to the stakeholders. That means the people providing the service. So typically, we always look at 3 types of evaluation assessment. We always look at, okay, for funders, I think there are funders in the room. It's important because we need to be supported by funders to implement a lot of this project. So productivity calculation, it's one critical bit. Now, even as a clinician myself, I used to think productivity is a dirty word. How can you gauge my productivity? The type of patients I work with is so difficult. How can you measure it in time? But as I grow older in the sector, I start to realize, okay, sometimes the way we do our work, we always have the best intention for the needs of our client, but we may not optimize or be good steward of the resources that is put in our hands. So simply put, maybe a therapy task, a activity program can be done in 5 steps, but sometimes we do it all in 8 steps. That does mean more resources have to be put in. It's a very simple equation. You are one human being. So if you put this amount of time in this particular patient, basically other patients are shortchanged. It's a very simple equation. So productivity in a sense is helping us okay, are we optimizing the resources that is put in the work so that we can really benefit optimal target audience? Now, the other one that is really coming out very much in the recent years are what we call client impact evaluation. Now, long gone are the days where we say, okay, if you're in a care setting, in a care delivery setting, whatever you do is good. But I guess now is, how do you know what you do is good for your patients or your clients? What is your evidence? Now that then pushes the practitioner to now fine-tune the way they do their work, to build that competency that when they do spend that time engaging the client, providing the service is translatable to measurable, visible outcome. And that becomes a very good accountability structure back to people who fund the service, back to people who employ you to do the work, back to actually the clients who pay money to use your service. Now, as the other third one that is really critical is process. And as a clinician, I'm quite guilty myself. I last time never think about process. But as I start working in the more role as a consultant, a lot of us are actually wired. The way we do our work is wired by the process. So if you now need to review your process, need to rethink how you do your work properly, the most logical step to actually redesign and review is actually the process of doing that. That means the process of how you conduct your service, your activities, your therapy, your intervention. What is the outline process? Because that process is also going to help you uncover how much time, how much effort, how much resources is put in to execute this care, this activity, or this program. And from there, then you can start thinking, okay, in the area of use of cobot technology, how can things be streamlined? How can things be simplified? So that's a quick overview at the Discover phase, where we do really quite a fair bit of application in terms of understanding the baseline current state. Of course, I use DEXI because to me, I think DEXI is a very good illustration in terms of addressing the use of cobot technology in direct client kind of services. So HTAP stands for Humanoid Enabled Therapeutic and Activity Program. So the robot is a robot, but the robot is comes with a program that actually can be translated to provide direct client impact. So in this sense, after the baseline have been uncovered, we determine what is the productivity level, what is the client impact so far that when your clients are using your services, what is the current process of conducting activity. When DEXI is actually introduced with the existing function, so basically it can do therapy-related, activity-related type of function. We have to then restart and think, okay, how can this solution fit into the organization existing services or program? So it's not just bringing a piece of equipment and just put it there and say use. You have to now start thinking, okay, when you bring an equipment like this, if I input this into a therapy program, how is this equipment going to be used consistently? If it's now used as part of your activity program, then how would this HTAP, this humanoid program, actually be part of your holistic program? So that's why we need to look at the process, we need to look at a program, because like even recently we've introduced to about 6 organizations using this humanoid. Every single organization use it quite differently. So in the deliver phase, that's where we talk about how do we pilot. But piloting is actually one of the easiest things because a lot of us are problem solvers and a lot of us thrive on new things, right? But the fact is we need to be steady and consistent to implement a sustainable change. So we always start with training the staff thoroughly in terms of knowing what is this machine for, what will the program look like. The other thing is about their job role. Like it, even a very simple piece of, let's say, introducing a vacuum cleaner to do vacuum cleaning in a nursing home changes the way your cleaner does the job. That means a process needs to be looked at. So now if I'm introducing this humanoid program into a, let's say, activity program for this particular nursing home, now the staff has to take on other roles and job responsibility. Example, they may now have to learn how to set up the machine. Instead of them conducting the bingo, the one shouting the number, now the robot does it. So then what do? Is it they sit at the side and shake leg? No, right? So what are the other roles that this person have to do? So all these are part and parcel of what we call the pilot implementation bit. So the job redesign, the training, and the hand-holding, which is very critical. Whatever you train the staff to do, ultimately, you must provide that ground level support as they're rolling out the program, the care, the intervention, so that the staff are actually supported to implement the change. Now, the last bit in deliver phase is critical because Sharon said it just now, what gets measured gets done. So the reverse is also true. Whatever is not measured is just not done. So if you look at it, the post-pilot, we always come back to around full circle of at baseline, those are the things that we have measured. At post-implementation, we'll definitely measure those impact in visible, measurable terms. So that pushes, I think, for the practitioner to start also thinking, if I say my therapy is good, how it's my clients receiving that? What is the improvement seen in that client? And what is the tool that can justify that? If I say my program is robust, then what is the evidence? What is the outreach? What is the improvement? What is the positive response? So the post-implementation evaluation very much talks about that. Ultimately, because it's about after the pilot, stabilizing the state, and then think about how to scale up that to impact to more users. Of course, a very critical part in post-implementation evaluation is also reporting back to the stakeholders. Ultimately, somebody is paying for the organization or for you to introduce a piece of technology or equipment. It's more than just taking the money to buy it. In fact, that's the easiest part. At the end, really, it's after you've secured the funding, you've purchased this, you need to also articulate what is the impact on the staff, on the client, as well as on the organization. Now, this closes the loop because when you present that back to your management, back to the funders, ultimately, you also establish a reliable, trustworthy reputation that more resources can be pumped into your organization to continue that good work they are doing. So generally, this is the whole overview of a very practical illustration of when you're using a cobot technology. I mean, from Goshen's perspective, that's normally how we will support the organization to do so. Sharon?
I mean, Huya, sounds like evaluation is one of the key things that we are talking about here. Evaluating client impact, definitely one of the larger things to talk about. Maybe if you can share with.
So the last bit I wanted to just end off, since we talked so much about evaluation, and that's something that as a clinician, I'm also realizing over the last 7 years, there is a need for the practitioner to justify the output of your service or care or intervention. So we use the PCIO tool, which is something that is developed by Goshen about 8 years ago, purely because there was a gap in the market. There was a gap to actually justify. If I do a good care for my client, how do I know it? What is that tool that can show me? And particularly if you're working with people with cognitive impairment and quite complex kind of disability, it is quite hard for them to give you a satisfaction survey, right? So we find that for people who are cognitively impaired, observation is one of the key roles to actually gather that. So the Goshen PCIO tool really is aimed together to measure, evaluate a couple of things, particularly for users who are unable to articulate how satisfied they are with the service. So one of the key things for clients in care organization is the way they receive the care. Now, the way they receive the care is like customer service, we say in F&B and retail, right? But in care settings, is there customer service? That is reflected from the way how the staff actually interacts with the patients, with the clients, with the resident. So the PCIO helps to do that. Now, the second thing we can use the PCIO tool for evaluation is also to understand the level of knowledge and skills that the staff have, and to address the gaps of it through necessary training and support after these needs are surfaced through the use of this observation tool. Now, of course, the last bit is really particularly for people with cognitive impairment. I mean, personally, for me, every time I go to a care setting, I feel that our clients are sitting around too much, doing nothing. That basically translates to engagement. Now, how do we justify it? We measure it and we observe it. So for some of you who are actually quite keen, go around your care setting, take a quick walk, do a simple math calculation. How many hours a day do your clients actually sit and do nothing, waiting? I mean, basically they're waiting for somebody to come and do something to them, or somebody to come and feed them. Then what are they doing in the interim time? Because any time that they spend unengaged, it's often the time that they start to deteriorate, right? So how do we seize those moments that in their during lull period, I call sitting and waiting, doing nothing. How can Cobotics actually help to improve that quality of life through lesser waiting and maybe through more meaningful engagement? So this is basically what that PCIO tool is. And maybe if I can proceed to the last slide, how can you use it in translation practically? Now, in care settings, mealtime is a huge activity for every care setting, right? And it's also the time where the older people look forward because that's about the most exciting thing in the care environment. So PCIO, for example, is a great tool to actually observe how happy are they during their meal times. Are they happily eating? Are they happily being fed? Or when they are eating, what kind of interactions are they just quietly eating and finishing all the meal in 5 or 7 minutes? Now, of course, the most translatable one is how much food are you throwing away? So the PCIO we look at the client reaction code, it helps actually to ascertain, okay, what is the quality of the mealtime experience? That's one way. Now, the second one is any activity. I think recently AIC has also funded many organizations, for example, to run cooking type related of activity. So that's one good way using this tool to actually justify, okay, with this funding, with this initiative, what is the client impact you have created? We all know that old people will love it. But I guess now it's translating it to what is that client impact? Because if it's really that great, with this data, you technically can ask for more resources or roll out this program to more people. Now, the third one, which is the closest to my heart, it's about in many care settings, we have what we call sometimes clients who are not cooperative for whatever reason, right? A lot of times we blame it on the dementia, but as an honest practitioner, I start to realize when I go around nursing home and observe during the shower time and transfer time, and there's what we call a lot of combative, sometimes uncooperative behavior. It may not be because of the disability of the person, but it's maybe the way we interact with the resident that is either soliciting or not soliciting cooperation. So the PCIO has been one very great tool that Goshen has used extensively whenever we do observation of care interactions. So this could be very intimate care activities like during shower. If during shower, the residents are like fighting and shouting and resisting you, the PCIO has given us very rich data to actually influence a lot of change. It could be during regular care interactions, like during transfers, doing medication surveying, where if you find that the residents are not cooperative or positive, and that poses a lot of challenge to a lot of the care staff, the PCIO actually provide a different facets perspective of the client, why they are so unhappy during that care interactions. So basically, this is a quick overview of what, for those of you who are interested, the observation tool is not a tool just to observe. The question is always to observe what, and with the what, how can we help uplift the whole service quality and the service experience of the clients? Yeah, so that's a quick overview of what we can use PCIO for.
And for those who are interested, our upcoming training is actually on 13th and 14th of July. We have partnered with Academy at Peacehaven to run this training. And if you are interested, or you are keen to find out more, you can register firstly using the QR code over here, or you can contact our program manager, Wayne, at wayne@consultgoshen.com. Or you know what, just give us a call. We can talk to you more. We can also share with you maybe, or consult with you what your needs are. Okay. I will keep the link up later in the chat. So, for those of you who are interested, 13th and 14th of July. Thank you. Of course, the other thing that is very exciting, we're gonna be watching Please Watch This Space to interact with our very first virtual human. We'll keep you all guys in the loop since you have all signed up for webinars, and those who have accepted our marketing materials. This is something very interesting and upcoming. Yep. If you are keen, again, maybe it's not about PCIO, maybe it's about DEXI, the humanoid, or any other Cobotics, you can contact us for a 30-minute complimentary consultation. This is to thank all of you for your presence here today. Special 30-minute complimentary consult. You could book a time slot using this QR code, or if you would like to contact us directly, you can drop me an email at sharon@consultgoshen.com, or again, give us a call. Okay. So we've reached the critical part of today's webinar, which is the Q&A portion. I'm going to stop share here and get my colleague Kian Huat to share some of the burning questions that you guys have. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you are very interested about the funding sources for social services and nonprofits. And the other one's about older workers. Okay, and about whether it would diminish person-centered care. Okay, maybe let's with the time that we have, address the top 3 questions. Yeah, I will pass it to Ria.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon. So the first question, anything to talk about money, I think we have somebody from NCSS in the room, but I think the most direct ones will be the AIC funding as well as the NCSS tech funding, right? So may I suggest that those of you who are keen, please just maybe contact us. Maybe we can tell you more, as well as we link you up to the appropriate professionals from either side to actually tap on that funding. So I think in this day and age, it's not the lack of money, it's for the lack of the ideas and maybe the drive to want to try new things. So funding wise, please reach out. AIC, NCSS, in fact, there are other pots of funding that we kind of know are available that if some of you are keen to adopt Cobotics. Now, the second question, in fact, the next 2 questions I'm very interested. We have older workers, how do I get them to adopt tech? If you remember, we talked about just how the 3D approach. The key thing is any solution that is presented to people, it must present it in a manner to, number one, augment or help them to do their work. I was in another nursing home yesterday and we used DEXI. Existing baseline, 6 people attend exercise only, the clients. After using DEXI, 18 clients 18 clients attend the exercise. So now that translates to when the older, and these are older workers using the technology, it's about letting them realize that, oh, okay, when we guide them to adopt this tool, it is not just to use a new tool for new tool's sake. It is ultimately using that new tool so that they actually have greater human value impact. So now this older person knows, very good. When they do exercise, I go around and help the other people. Because last time I have to do the exercise, nobody to help the old people. So very few people can actually participate. So I guess my suggestion is always when we introduce it, we are careful that we don't communicate that it's because they're not doing a good job. I think it's to validate that a lot of the workers are coming from a good space where they want to contribute to their sector, but a lot of times they're doing based on, at best, they know how. So when we provide a solution, when we provide the technology, it's also to present it in a manner that is respecting of their contribution. That's number one. I think number 2 is also hearing out some of their concerns, which I shared just now. There were quite a lot of ground level issues that's commonly shared. And then the third bit is provide time to actually let the person learn. So if you realize just now when we talk about implementation, we always talk about training, we always talk about on-site coaching. Training, learning is just theoretical. Applying back to the ground level work to do the work day to day involves you guiding the person through that process. So I think that is one way. And I think whether it's old or young, it doesn't matter. I think it's about supporting the person to actually have a mindset shift to how seeing this solution, it's going to be a help rather than threaten their existence in the workplace. Now, the next question, will cobots diminish person-centered care? Let me tell you, when we bring DEXI, the robot, into many nursing homes, most people are thinking, time already, no need human being already. But the reverse is true. Actually, if you understand why Taxi was conceptualized and developed as a solution, it is all about person-centered care. I think very briefly just now I spoke about, if you just go back to your nursing home, to your day center, to the service you provide, you take a walk around and you just mentally count how many hours a day your clients are actually sitting there doing nothing. It's a huge impetus for you to start thinking, then what can we put in place such that when the users come to your service, they are actually getting the right to get better. Now, whether is it functionally getting better, whether is it in terms of well-being getting better, the clients always deserve that. But sometimes the organization or staff, when we are so bogged down by how busy we are, we forget our clients are not busy at all when they come and use our service. That in itself is counter person-centered care. So the use of robotics, the use of technology, technically is supposed to help the practitioner in all of us, whether you're a clinician or not. But if you are in this CCOs delivering service, designing services and program so that your end users, when they come to you, they are benefiting, then there is a lot of space to start looking at how Cobotics can. Remember, Cobotics technology is about augmenting your routine, your mundane, your repetitive work. And a lot of us are doing that in our work. So much so that when we do all this routine and repetitive job, we are unable to deliver higher, more complex human value type work. So simply put, as I end this, I'm a therapist. If my job is just to keep moving their hands, just go and do exercises for our old people, where if I now have a machine that can do that, then I can now think of designing program. Now I can think of in terms coming out more innovative innovation that can create actual improvement for the person. Why won't I let a piece of equipment take over that mundane job? Currently, a lot of our assistants are doing that. But if that equipment can be put in place to replace even the technical assistant's job, then the technical assistants actually go around and help or deliver more high value type of intervention. So back to this question, it should help promote person-centered care, if the cobotics put in the hand of the user are very mindful what that care intent is all about. Okay. Can I thank you all I'm mindful of time. Thank you very much for your questions. Sharon, maybe if we can remove that.
Thanks, Leah. I just have maybe one request. If you can give us your feedback for today's session, that will mean a lot to us, so that we know how to improve in future. And also to maybe share with us what are burning topics that you guys would like to hear more of, so that we can plan ahead for the rest of the year. So if you can access via this QR code, I'll also leave the link for you. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Can I really thank you for your presence today? I think really this series of PCC series is really it's our way of contributing back to the sector. I think there are many topics and discussions that we can have if we created a platform that has more like-minded people coming together. So we hope today really has been a useful, informative session for you. And can I also invite us, if any one of you, just need to reach out and have a conversation, toy some ideas. I guess Goshen is always looking, it need not always translate to business. Even if it's just having conversation, toiling ideas, I think let's start having that conversation, because the whole idea is about person-centered care and we can't do it alone. And I think like what Sharon said, if we're all very blessed, we will all get to grow old. So if we can all chip in to help make this sector a better one for us to use it eventually, but also to support the people who are working in it. So we are really grateful for your attendance today. And yeah, we hope to see you the next round. We have another session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ria.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Russell.
Sharon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Song.
Thanks, Russell. Thanks, Nicholas. Thanks, Grace. Catch you another time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And Junisha, I'm not sure if she's there. Thank you. Bye. Bye, Junisha. Take care.